Okay, welcome back from lunch, everyone. We're going to get started with meditation, and then I'm going to move into this topic of cultivating healthy mental states, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. This is our topic for this afternoon, where I'm going to teach you how to apply these healthy mental states in your life to transform the mind away from certain feelings and emotions that you're currently having. So if you'd like to join for the meditation, I'm going to do breathing mindfulness meditation. The way that I'm going to do things throughout the course is in the morning, we'll do loving kindness, and in the afternoon, we'll do breathing mindfulness meditation. And then if you would like, you can also be meditating in the evening too. So you'll get your 2 to 3 sessions in if you're also meditating in the evening on your own. And you can decide for yourself what you would like it to be, whether it's loving kindness or breathing mindfulness meditation. So just like before, I'm going to do the chanting. I'm not going to do guidance because now we've been meditating with me a little bit. Some of you guys have meditated with me quite a bit, and I'd like to kind of help you guys to start moving away from the guidance. So I'll just do just a little bit of light guidance just to kind of help you just a little bit, but you're going to see it's going to be significantly less. And then we'll just be meditating, and then we'll come out of the meditation with some chanting. So the guidance from your teacher to do meditation is impermanent. It's not going to be permanent, okay? All right. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakava Bhutang Mahakavanang Apivateyami Savakato Mahakavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Arhasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Mahakava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rokavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati. Take some nice deep breaths through the nose, establishing a nice, steady, consistent breath. Cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go. and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะคะวะโพตังมะคะวันตังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังโพโตภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, welcome back. So I'm going to share this topic with you of cultivating healthy mental states, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. This is where you're going to learn about certain symptoms in the mind and then the remedy or the antidote for those. So as we go, just like always, if you'd like to ask questions, feel free to ask any and all questions here at the temple. If you guys could use the microphones, and then those of you online, you can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or in Zoom, you can raise your hand electronically and ask any and all questions that you like. Okay, so these Brahma-viharas, they're referred to as the Brahma-viharas because during the lifetime of the Buddha, they referred to God as Brahma. And that's what we would say, God or Allah. They would use the word Brahma. And during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were various people who were teaching and they were practicing various things. And the predominant thing that was being practiced during the lifetime of the Buddha was Hinduism. That was being practiced long before the Buddha. And they would refer to the individuals who were practicing this, the priests, they would call them Brahmin, because these Brahmin were helping people to come closer to Brahma, to the God, right? And they actually believed in multiple different gods during this lifetime. Well, the Brahmin were essentially doing rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship, and people were convinced that they needed to go to these Brahmin in order to do some ceremony, and they were going to bring them closer to God, and then this person's life was supposed to get better. So there was this fee that was needed to be paid to the Brahmin in order to do this rite, ritual, ceremony, or worship to bring them closer to Brahma or to the God. And these Brahmin, the way that they would become a Brahmin is they would be born into this family. So there was like a strong caste system in place, and about 15% of society was in this Brahmin family. And it was thought that if you were born into this family, that you were a holy person because you were born into this family. And the Buddha knew that this wasn't actually true, that he talked about what makes you a wholesome person is your actions. It's not what family you were born into that determines whether you're a wholesome person or not, or a wise person. It's about your actions and how you choose to conduct yourself in day-to-day life. And because of this that was going on, people were convinced that they couldn't do anything to improve their life, that the only way to improve their life was to go see the Brahmin and pay them money, and then they would do some rites or rituals or ceremonies or worship. They were supposed to go home, and then their life was supposed to get better. And the Buddha knew that this wasn't true, because it was about cultivating wisdom, about training your mind, about making wise decisions, and then this is what's going to produce wholesome results in your life. Just rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship isn't going to cultivate wisdom for you and help you in your life. What helps you in your life is making better decisions, but you need wisdom of the natural laws in order to make these better decisions. So this was going on for a long time, and as the Buddha was teaching, he started teaching what I'm teaching you, the path to enlightenment, and more people were learning that what they were doing with Brahmin isn't actually the truth. So these Brahmin would actually be doing these rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship, but they would also be teaching a little bit of moral conduct, and they would also be teaching a little bit of things like this, which is these 4 healthy mental states. So what the Buddha did is he was able to bring together a collection of teachings that it takes in order to get to this enlightened mental state. And even though these Brahma-viharas didn't originate with the Buddha, he was able to perfect them, describe them, explain how they factor into your overall training of your mind, and so forth and so on. So the Brahma-viharas were practiced before the Buddha, but he incorporated it into his teachings, just like meditation. Meditation was practiced before the Buddha. And even the natural law of karma was something that people talked about prior to the Buddha. But the Buddha brought a level of clarity and crispness and preciseness and understanding that other people didn't have. So the Brahma-viharas, they get this name because what vihara means is abode or a dwelling. So what the Brahmin were teaching is that by practicing these 4 healthy mental states, it would bring you closer to God and you could dwell with God. And this isn't what the Buddha was teaching, but this is what the Brahmin were teaching. What the Buddha was teaching is that these Brahma-viharas transform the mind and move it away from certain symptoms and things that I'm going to be explaining to you. And that's what you need to know in order to get to enlightenment. But in terms of understanding the root of this word Brahma-vihara, now you understand where this term Brahma-vihara comes from. That the Brahmin priest, the Hindu priest, were teaching that this is how you could dwell closer to God, or you could have a better relationship with God by practicing these Brahma-viharas. The Buddha didn't make God as a central figure in his teachings. He's not a central role in his teachings. The Buddha did teach about God, but he didn't make him a central role, because it's not God who determines whether or not you get to enlightenment or not. But because the Brahmin were teaching these kinds of things during the lifetime of the Buddha, and the Buddha knew that they helped to improve the condition of the mind, that's why they're part of his teachings. So I'm going to teach it to you, and as I refer to it once in a while as the Brahma-viharas, the way that I think about them is I think about them as 4 healthy mental states, because this is the qualities of mind that you're going to need to arise. In addition to some other qualities, you're going to need to arise these qualities of mind in order to help antidote or remedy certain issues that are in the mind. So this first one is called loving kindness. This is active goodwill towards all beings without judgment. This is it, having a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And we talked about this a little bit this morning in relationship to the meditation, so that you're already familiar with this. And we're going to go in and talk about unconditional love or loving kindness tomorrow morning in detail. I have a whole talk just about true love and love without attachment. But here, this is a certain mental state that you're cultivating, and you're using the loving kindness meditation that I taught you this morning to be able to cultivate this in the mind. And it's antidoting this anger, hatred, ill will, and these lesser versions like irritation, annoyance, and even the slightest dislike towards another being. When you have anger towards someone else, or when you're agitated, by someone else, it's actually your own mind. It's your craving, desire, attachment that's causing this. Or if you dislike somebody or you dislike what they're doing, this is because of your own craving and wanting things to be done a certain way. So when you're thinking in your mind, like, I don't like that person, that's an indication that you're having craving, desire, attachment in your mind. There's something you want that person to do, or there's something you want that person not to do. And that's what's arising, this anger, hatred, ill will, frustration, agitation, annoyance, the dislike. And you guys already know by now that it's breathing, mindfulness, meditation, and generosity that you would like to be practicing to work on eliminating your cravings, your desires, your attachments, your wants, your expectations. But then you're also going to need to work on this mental object of ill will that's in the mind. That's what loving kindness is used to be able to uproot and eliminate out of the mind. When we talk about purifying the mind, you're uprooting the mental objects of the 10 fetters that the Buddha teaches. The 10 fetters are these mental objects, these deeply rooted containers in the mind that I've taught in other classes and courses and retreats that you guys can easily see in Volume 1, Chapter 3. They're in there. There are these 10 individual pollutions that you're working to uproot. And this loving kindness uproots the ill will. Whenever you're having ill will, you're having bitterness and harshness and hostility towards others. And this is arising in your mind, but then your conduct is becoming unskillful. This is where your intentions, your speech, and your actions are becoming unskillful, and you can damage relationships very easily this way. So that's why the Buddha teaches moral conduct, so you know how to not cause harm, but you then also need to eliminate this ill will out of the mind by arising this loving kindness. This is the exact opposite of ill will. So the way that you arise this is through the meditation that I taught you this morning. You would like to develop that more and more and more, essentially rewiring the mind to be loving and kind. And then you go out in the world and you be loving and kind through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. So whenever any anger is coming up in the mind, you need to have enough mindfulness or awareness of mind to be able to spot it. Right? And you're not going to necessarily have that right out of the gate. That's why you need breathing mindfulness meditation to help you develop your mindfulness. But wherever you see the anger arising as a bodily sensation, or it becomes a feeling or the condition of the mind, you like to cut it off and let it go. Cut it off and let it go. And then you'd like to arise the loving kindness. If you've been doing loving kindness meditation, you're going to need to apply right effort to bring in this loving kindness in the mind where you're being loving and kind. So there were times where I was like in the middle of an argument with my wife, and I would just realize what I was doing, and I'd be like, this is silly. I'm sorry. And I might just give her a hug, right? I'm so sorry. I shouldn't be this way. Right? So you can just cut it off and just let it go. Even if you're mid-sentence or it's on the tip of your tongue and you're about to yell at somebody. No, this is unwise. It's unskillful. It's going to damage your relationships. So you can apply right effort to bring in the loving kindness. And if you're doing the loving kindness meditation, this is what's going to help you to do that. Okay, so this is the first Brahma-vihara. Then there's compassion. Compassion is the concern for the misfortune of others. This is where the middle way is, where you have concern for the misfortune of others. But oftentimes the unenlightened mind is going to live on different sides. The one side of, or the opposite, not the opposite, but the one side of being to the one side of compassion is worrying about the world or having anxiety, like we were talking about when you watch the news perhaps, or you hear some unfortunate situation that happens in the world. You might worry and have anxiety or stress about what's going on in the world. That's not where you would like to live, because there's cravings, desires, attachments there. There's certain longing, yearning that the mind's having, wanting the world to be a certain way. And now there's anxiety and worry because of it. But the other side of that is indifference, where you could care less of what's happening in the world. And oftentimes this is what the unenlightened mind can see, is it can see these two opposite sides, this black and white. But what the Buddha is teaching you is to come to the middle, and that's where compassion comes in, where you have concern for the misfortune of others. And this is a mental state that you're cultivating. It doesn't mean that you necessarily perform any actions. You might, because of your compassion, take action to do something, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you will. Right? So in certain situations, you might take action and you might not. But compassion is just having the concern for the misfortune of others. So you might be walking down the street and you see somebody who doesn't have a place to live and maybe they're homeless. And if you think indifferent and you're just like, so what? That's their karma. I don't care. That's not where you're interested in being. But also worrying about this person, like, oh my gosh, are they going to have enough food? Oh, it's so bad. They're homeless. Oh, it's so bad. That's not going to help you either, right? So you like to come to the middle where you have concern. It's like, oh, this is unfortunate. Someone doesn't have food. They don't have shelter. And then that's when you decide, are you going to do something about it? And in some situations you might, in some situations you might not. You might be on your way to a business meeting. You're already behind schedule and it doesn't make sense for you to do something, but you would like to maintain the concern for the misfortune of others in your mind. That's what the wholesome quality of compassion is. Yesterday, I was on my way home, or not yesterday. I think it was Sunday. I think I was on my way home, or one of these days in the last couple of days. My wife is in America. She's gone for 2 months, and my son's at home by himself, and he doesn't usually spend time at home. He's 11 years old. He's just starting to spend time on his own at home. And I had kind of disassembled the kitchen, and he wasn't able to eat because he wasn't able to cook food. And he contacted me here and he said, hey, can you bring me home some food? And I knew I was going to be kind of late getting home. And I let him know that I was going to be, a little bit late and I wouldn't be able to bring him food. And would he be okay? And he said he would be okay. So I ended up going out to lunch with some students, and I ended up ordering a pizza, and I was taking it home to him. And along the way, I saw this person got in a motorbike accident. They crashed. And in some situations, I've stopped and I've helped people because I know a little bit of first aid and training and stuff like this, and I will usually help them. But in this situation, I was on my way home and I knew my son needed this food, and he hadn't had food all day long, and it was like 3:30, I think it was, or 2:30 in the afternoon. He hadn't had food all day long. And I was like, wow, I need to get home. And I looked and I checked and I made sure that they were okay, and there were some other people over there helping this person, and I felt comfortable going forward and taking this pizza home. So in some situations you might stop and you might help in this situation. In other situations you might not. This is where there isn't a plug and play. It's not black and white. It's not, if this happens, do this, and if this happens, do that. You need to have this higher consciousness where you're looking at the variables of whatever situation you're doing in any given day, and then decide what it is that you are able to do. But if you have the concern for the misfortune of others, you're going to maintain that concern. So I had concern for this gentleman who got in a motorbike accident, but I wasn't worried about him. And I also wasn't indifferent. I stopped and I looked and I checked, and there was like 2 or 3 people getting out of their cars to go help him. And I was like, all right, sweet. He's got some people to help him. I'm going to keep on going, and I'm going to go help my son. Right? So this is where you need to have that concern for the misfortune of others, but it doesn't mean you're going to necessarily do something. It's a mental state that you're working to develop. And oftentimes this compassion goes along with loving kindness. As you're doing loving kindness meditation and you're practicing this in day-to-day life, you will probably notice that compassion will arise alongside of loving kindness. But what you would like to do is anytime you see your mind living on opposite sides of the spectrum, where your mind is either indifferent about people's misfortunes, or you're worried or having anxiety about the misfortune of others, you'd like to cut that off. You'd like to cut that off and let it go and arise the concern. Oftentimes people think when they're worried about somebody that that's your love. That's not actually your love that's causing that worry. It's the craving, desire, attachment. Or if you were indifferent, you might think that you don't care, right? And what you would like to get to is this middle way where you're practicing the concern for the misfortune of others. Because there's plenty of people who are in unfortunate circumstances, and you're not going to be able to help everybody, but at least if you have the concern for their misfortune in your mind, that's what you'd like to cultivate. And it'll take you away from this worry and anxiety, and it'll take you away from this indifference and bring the mind to the middle. So any questions on these two, loving kindness and compassion? No questions? Let me see if we have anything online. Okay, I'm not seeing anything online either. Okay, so the next two. Now we talk about sympathetic joy. What sympathetic joy is where you have joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it, because this is going to help take you away from the jealousy and envy. You might notice with certain cravings in your mind that you have jealousy and envy in certain situations. And this is going to hinder you from having harmonious relationships. Because where you're jealous and envious of other people, it's going to come across in your intentions, your speech, and your actions. No matter how hard you try to hide it, it will come through. So if you can train your mind to practice sympathetic joy, you can have more harmonious relationships where you have joy for others' success. So in a situation where you're noticing that you have envy or jealousy, you're going to need to use your mindfulness to be aware of that. That's why the core central path of the Eightfold Path is so important that I taught yesterday, is cultivate your mindfulness. So you're aware, oh my goodness, here comes some jealousy, here comes some envy, and you'd like to cut that off and let it go and arise this sympathetic joy for others' success. So say you're at work and there's a new job that comes across, and there's a new job at your company, and you apply for this new job. And so does maybe some of your other coworkers apply for the job. And then say you've done the interview, you've done everything, and you're just sitting away at your desk doing your work, and one of your friends comes by and says, hey, guess what? I got that promotion. And this is like the first you heard of it, and you're like, whoa, and like all of a sudden you feel this jealousy coming up because you wanted that job, you had a certain craving for it. Even if inside you feel the jealousy, just try to put some words together and say, you know what, wonderful, congratulations. Right? Even if inside you don't quite feel it, you got to arise it up. You got to apply the right effort to bring it up into the mind. And more you can practice having sympathetic joy. Maybe one of your friends come by and they say, hey, guess what? I'm going to Australia. Right? And maybe you've always wanted to go to Australia and you've never had an opportunity to go, and you feel a little bit envious. Apply the right effort to bring it up. Hey, that sounds like a great trip. I bet you're going to have a great time. You know, wonderful, good for you, right? Just bring it up a little bit. And each time you do this, it'll get easier and easier and easier. But initially, it's like a wall. You're trying to break through that wall. So you're going to need your mindfulness. That's why breathing mindfulness is so important, that meditation that you've been learning, practicing your breathing mindfulness, because you need your mindfulness to be aware when the jealousy and envy is coming up. And then you're going to need to apply the right effort to arise this sympathetic joy, where you have joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. Okay? Then there's equanimity. There's two aspects to equanimity. I'll explain to you both sides. What equanimity is it's mental calmness and composure, evenness of temper, even in a difficult situation. No matter what's going on, you need to have calmness and composure. Because when you allow your mind to be shaken up and it's uncalm, you won't have mindfulness. You won't have awareness of mind. When you don't have awareness of mind, you're not going to have concentration. And when you don't have concentration, you're not going to be able to access your wisdom and make wise decisions that produce wholesome results. So by the time you get to enlightenment, and what you're working to be able to do is make all 100% wise decisions that lead to wholesome results. Because as long as you're making unwise decisions, it's going to produce unwholesome results, and you can't get out from under all these unwise decisions and this unwholesome karma that's coming back to you. So you're going to need to get to this stability of mind where the mind can be calm and composed, making wise decisions. Because when your mind is calm, you will have mindfulness. You'll have awareness of mind. Then when you have awareness of mind, you will have concentration. And when you have concentration, like focus and clarity, then you can access your wisdom, and now you can make wise decisions that's going to produce wholesome results. So when you get that phone call that your mom's in the back of an ambulance and she's been in a terrible car accident, and you grab your keys and try to rush out the door and bolt across town because your mind's all shaken up, you're not making wise decisions in that situation because your mind's uncalm. It's all shaken up. You don't have your mindfulness. You don't have your concentration. You're not accessing your wisdom. Your craving, your desire, your attachment for mom to be permanently healthy is kicking in. And now if you bolt across town, you might end up in the back of an ambulance yourself. Right? You might get in an accident. But at the very least, when you show up to the hospital, your mind's going to be so shaken up, you're not going to be able to talk to the doctors and nurses, hear what it is they have to say, explain what's happening, and make wise decisions to help your mom. So having your mind all shaken up like that, arriving to the hospital, you're either going to get in an accident on the way there, or at the very least, you're not going to be able to help your mom once you get to the hospital. So what you'd like to do is have calmness and composure, especially in a difficult situation. So anytime any situation is coming, right away, calmness and composure. calmness and composure. You're going to need to calm the mind down. And if that means you need to step away from the situation for a bit to calm it down, then do that, right? And now when you have that calmness and composure, then you can make your wise decisions that are going to produce wholesome results. So this is the first part of equanimity. And what the unwholesome qualities are that you're antidoting with this is the restlessness, the worry, the anxiety, and the overactive mind. When the mind's overactive and worried and having anxiety, the equanimity is going to calm that down and help you be more composed. And this is going to help you to make wise decisions in your life and in your relationships with others. But there's this other side to equanimity too. The root word of equanimity is equal. So the other part of equanimity is treating all beings equally. You're going to need to treat everyone in your life equally. So for example, if you were a parent and you have multiple kids, or if you're an employer and you have multiple employees, right? You're going to need to treat them all equally. Because if you treat one person one way and another person another way, their craving is going to kick in potentially. They become jealous or envious. They don't realize that it's being caused by their own mind because they're not practicing the teachings. And now they're going to be angry at you. They're going to have painful feelings and they're going to think it's coming from you. So in addition to helping you train your mind and get you to a point where your mind can be peaceful and joyful, the Buddha is also teaching you how to navigate the world with a bunch of unenlightened beings. Because there's a lot of people out there that have craving, desire, attachment. And if you're an employer, for example, and maybe you bring back your favorite employee a milkshake after lunch and you didn't get the 2 or 3 other employees a milkshake, they're going to be jealous and envious, and now you're going to have problems at work. They're not going to be interested in working for you as well as they would if you would have just got 3 milkshakes, one for everybody, right? Or if you have 2 kids and you treat one kid one way and you treat another kid another way, then your kids are going to have difficulties and struggles because they're getting jealous, they're getting envious of each other based on the attention and the time and the things that you're doing for one kid versus the other. And now you're going to find that they're having painful feelings. They're attributing those painful feelings to you unwisely because they just don't have the wisdom. And now your relationship is going to struggle. So by you practicing this other aspect of equanimity, which is fairness in all your relationships and treating everybody equally, this is actually going to help you in your relationships. So no matter what relationship it is, you'd like to practice equally and fairly. So let's just say you work at a company and you have 100 employees. If you can't afford to get a milkshake for all 100 employees, it's better just not to get the milkshakes, right? Find something else that you can do, right? Or say you're at work and say it's your birthday and you brought in some a cake, right? And you can't give enough cake to 300 employees. But what you could do is you could have a cake, you could take it into the conference room and just say, hey, everybody, I brought cake. If you guys would like to come get a piece, I'd like to just offer you a piece. And then it's their choice of whether they come or not. Where when you're going around and you're handing out the cake to each person, if you don't hand it out to all 300 people, there's the potential for someone to get jealous and then they're going to attribute it to you. So you can still practice generosity. That's what I'm talking about here, practicing generosity in order to share with your coworkers, but you can change it if you understand the natural laws of existence. You can adjust it so that you can navigate the world more readily, where you maybe go into a conference room and invite people to come. And then if someone chooses not to come, it's their choice. It's not your choice. You've made the offer to all 300 employees perhaps. And you can even let them know, hey, I don't have cake for everybody, but whoever comes, first come, first serve, it's here for you, come enjoy, right? And then whoever comes, it's their choice to come or not. And this is how you can keep your Gama clean, right? Because you're not interested in making unwise decisions. It's going to produce unwholesome Gama. And choosing to do things where you're not treating people fairly, this is going to produce unwholesome Gama for you. So you're interested in keeping your Gama clean so that you treat everybody around you fairly. Okay, so any questions on these two? And by the way you cultivate these is the same way that I've been talking about, where you have mindfulness when any of these qualities are arising, like with equanimity, restlessness, worry, anxiety, overactive mind. You got to use your mindfulness to spot that and then right effort to cut it off and let it go and know the solution, that calmness and composure. Or if you see arrogance and ego arising, this is where the mind, there's other things you need to do with arrogance and ego, but equanimity helps you with this. Whereas if you're looking at yourself as above people or below people, treating everybody fairly will help you a bit with your arrogance and your ego. Let me give you one more example of this that I just thought about from my life. One time I was with some students and my son was rollerblading at a place here in Thailand, in Chiang Mai, where you can rollerblade. And I was talking to one of the students, and he happened to be a parent too. His child was rollerblading. And my son apparently fell down and hit his head pretty hard when he was rollerblading. And that person's wife came and talked to me and said, "Hey, David, your son just fell down. He wasn't wearing a helmet and he hasn't gotten back up yet." Right? And he looks like he's pretty hurt. And I said, "Oh, okay." And I just said, "Hold on a moment." And I went and took care of the situation. I went over there. And I didn't rush over and say, oh my goodness, what happened? How are you okay? Right? This is just the emotion that would be coming up, and it's going to make the situation worse. So instead, I just walked over. I said, "Hey, looks like you fell down." He's like, "Yep, I sure did." I was like, "How's it feel?" He's like, "Oh, it hurts. It hurts really bad." And I said, "You weren't wearing your helmet. Would have been wise to wear your helmet." He's like, "Yeah, I probably will next time." So then we just talked about it, right? And then we just he slowly got up and we talked about it. He did a little bit more rollerblading. But then when we left, I started observing him, and I started noticing at one point when we were driving down the road, he actually started vomiting. And I knew that this was a sign of a concussion, that if you start vomiting. So then we just slowly made our way to the hospital. We happened to be like 1 minute from a hospital. So we just pulled into the hospital and I was able to help him get seen, right? Whereas if you're all shaken up in these kinds of situations, you'll have difficulties. You'll have difficulties making wise decisions. So you'd like to maintain your calmness and composure, realizing, yeah, your children are going to get hurt. Yeah, your mom is not going to be healthy permanently. Yeah, you're going to have these kinds of situations coming up, and allowing your mind to get all frazzled isn't going to solve the problem. Right? So you will need to bring this in, because the people around you might not function that way. I noticed when I was in America, when people's children would fall down on the ground, right away they would run over there. Oh my goodness, honey, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? This is one of the first things I noticed when I came to Thailand. When their kids fall down, they just watch them. They just look at them and, oh, they're not crying. Okay. They don't even do anything. The kid just gets back up. Right? You very rarely see a Thai kid fall down and start crying. If you guys have been around children, go to the playground. You can see when Thai children fall down, their parents don't rush over to them and brush them off and make sure they're perfectly okay. And because of that, when a parent goes over and does that, the child's almost like, I should be upset. Right? When the parent rushes over, like, oh my goodness, honey, are you okay? Are you okay? It's like, they weren't crying before their parent came over, but then when the parent came over, they started crying, right? So this is where you can see that you can actually help your people around you by you staying calm, by you staying composed. And when your child falls down or when something like this happens, you just start asking questions. You just start seeing, are you okay? Is everything all right? Yeah, I'm fine. Okay, great. Right? There's no reason to be all frazzled and upset, because it's just going to produce a lot of emotion. You can see this in Thailand. This is one of the beauties about learning the teachings of the Buddha in Thailand, is that you can observe the Thai people, how they function, because more often than not, they're going to be practicing the teachings, and you can see like, wow, that's really different than the way I grew up. I grew up that when a child falls down, I rush over and have to brush it all off, and everybody gets all upset when the child falls down. But look, Thai people do something different. Wow, and that works because the child isn't even upset. They're not even crying. They just took a really nasty fall, and they're not even crying. Wow, that's pretty impressive. And you can see when you go to a restaurant, Thai people will practice generosity, for example. That's the next thing I'm going to talk to you guys about. You'll see all these different things in Thailand where Thai people are practicing the teachings, and this is one of the ways for you to learn, because you're surrounded by millions of people who are practicing the teachings. Doesn't mean you can't practice these teachings in your country, because you surely can. But here in Thailand, you're going to get a lot of examples of people practicing the teachings, and you can use that to help you inform your practice and become a better and better practitioner, because it helps you to gain more wisdom. So any questions on these two? Sympathetic, joy, and equanimity? No questions? Okay, I don't see anything online either. Okay. So this isn't part of the Brahma-viharas, but it's usually something that I teach when I talk about the Brahma-viharas, because it's, in my opinion, a healthy mental state, which is generosity. And in various classes and courses and programs, I teach about generosity. And here I teach it as well because it's so crucial for you, for your journey to enlightenment. You're going to need to practice generosity, where you're giving and sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return. And you can start small. If you find it very challenging to give and share with others, start small. Right? You're just walking into a store, hold the door for somebody and let them go in before you. Somebody drops something on the ground, pick it up. Ma'am, you dropped this. This is yours. Or sir, this is yours. You dropped this. These are just little simple things, right? And then you'd ultimately like to build up where you're sharing, maybe your clothing, your jewelry, your money, things like this, even allowing people to use it and just use it. Like maybe you have some jewelry that's very special and that you hold on to it really tightly. Well, that jewelry is impermanent. It's going to leave you someday. And if you hold on to it, it's going to be really hurt. It's going to really hurt when that piece of jewelry is missing or it's gone. So if you can have people share it and use it and do these kinds of things, in some cases you need to give things away, but in other cases you can just let people borrow things. And this will be really helpful. So if there's anything in your life that you particularly see that you're holding on to really closely, like maybe a watch or, some tools, if you're a handy person, and you have lots of tools in your shed and you're hold on to your tools really tightly, or maybe your makeup or your jewelry or your clothing or your money or any of these kinds of things, you would like to be regularly sharing these kinds of things. Even your home. If one of the last things you're thinking about is having somebody come over to your house and it's like, oh my goodness, I wouldn't be able to handle it if somebody was living side by side with me for 3 or 4 days, right? You can practice sharing, right? I remember when my son came home from the hospital. I don't know if you guys have ever had this feeling like a guest comes over and stays with you and you're like, hey, come on over and stay. And then after like 2 or 3 or 4 days, you're like, man, when are they going to leave? I can't wait for them to leave, right? You kind of feel a little bit angst. Well, I was like this with my son when he came home from the hospital, even though, of course, I was interested in having a son. We intentionally had a son. I remember him being there for like 3 or 4 or 5 days, and I'm like, when is this kid going to leave? Like, man, like this is like uncomfortable to have somebody else in our home. And then after a couple of weeks, I was like, he's going to be around for a while. I better let that go. So you're going to even need to get comfortable sharing your home. And the Buddha talks about this. He talks about sharing your home or sharing your dwelling. This is really helpful for you. So get used to sharing all these different things and sharing food and sharing all these things, because generosity is going to train your mind to let go. And you're going to need to apply active effort to do this, because we're oftentimes taught to share when we're a child, but we're not taught why. This is the reason why, is because it trains your mind to let go. Whereas if you were selfish, you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment as a selfish person. There's no way you're going to be peaceful and joyful because your mind's holding on. So you need to practice even generosity from the middle way. If you were having craving, desire, attachment, where you were just giving and giving and giving and giving excessively, you wouldn't have the basic needs that you need in order to survive. But if you were never sharing, your mind would be selfish. So you need to even bring generosity to the middle, where you find that middle way and then you practice your generosity. Okay? So any questions on generosity? Yes, ma'am.
So that includes like random acts of kindness and things like that. You were talking about holding the door for people and doing that. So anything that's just an act of kindness is considered generosity?
It's when you're giving and sharing more than is strictly required in any given situation, like your time, your effort, your energy, your resources, and no expectation of anything in return. So you might refer to that as an act of kindness, but it's giving and sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources. And like I was mentioning, I think yesterday or someday in the last few days that I've been teaching, I can't remember if everyone was here, you need to get to the point where you're not even expecting a thank you. Did you guys hear that? Did I say that in this class? Okay. You're not even interested in hearing a thank you, because if you're standing there holding the door, wanting them to say thank you, that's an expectation. And because of impermanence, not everybody's going to say thank you when they walk through the door. And you'll stand there holding the door and they'll walk past and they don't say thank you. And you're like, man, Why? In your mind, you'll be angry, you'll be frustrated. The reason why I know is because I used to have that, right? I used to do that. I used to hold the door, and if someone walked by and said thank you, wow, I felt great, right? And then if they walked by and they didn't say thank you, I was frustrated. Right? But that's because I wasn't practicing pure generosity. When you can get to pure generosity, you know the only reason why you're practicing generosity is to enhance the quality of your mind, and that's it. There's no expectation behind it. There's no wanting. You don't want anything from this person, because even if you want a thank you, you're still wanting something. You're not practicing pure generosity at that point. So anytime you're giving and sharing and you don't want anything back, it doesn't mean the person isn't going to give you something back, because they might, right? But your mind needs to get to the point where you don't want anything, because when you start practicing generosity with people, you're going to see people are going to practice generosity with you, right? Like if you went home to your home country and you started sharing food with your neighbors, like if you made a big dish and you shared it with your neighbors, you'll see they're going to be sharing food with you. But you shouldn't be sharing because that's what you want them to do, but that is what's going to happen. So people will give you things when you're practicing generosity. And it might be instantaneous even, or it might be a few days or a few weeks or a few months later, but you're going to see people will start practicing generosity with you. But that's not why you're practicing generosity. You're doing it because you would like to see the enhancement to the quality of your mind. That's what the Buddha teaches you, as that's the ultimate goal of your generosity. Mm-hmm. All right, no more questions? Okay, let me check online here. I don't see any online either. So this is the end of our class for today. It's basically 3 o'clock. Tomorrow, I'm going to pick things up in the morning with loving kindness meditation. And then afterwards, we're going to be talking about true love, love without attachment. This is such a pivotal topic in terms of building harmonious relationships. People oftentimes misunderstand craving, desire, attachment as love. And because of that, people have difficulties getting to harmonious relationships. So you're going to need to know true love and how to practice true love without attachment. So I'm going to teach you that after our loving kindness meditation in the morning. Then after our mid-morning break, I'm going to teach you practicing in the world of the unknowing, relationships with non-practitioners. So I'll be sharing that with you. And I don't have that written anywhere in a book, because I remember at the beginning of the course, I mentioned to you guys that there are certain chapters in volume 1 that I'm going to be covering in this course, but then all the other content, I haven't written about it in a book. This is one of those topics that I haven't written about in the book anywhere, but I'm going to teach it to you in class. Then after our lunch, then I'm going to teach you practicing non-attachment, how to eliminate attachment to those who are closest to us. And again, this is another topic that I haven't written about. So all the other topics for the rest of this course, I haven't actually written about. It's true love, love without attachment, which is the last topic in this course that I've actually written about and put in books. All the rest of it, I teach in classes like this because it's easier to teach you than it is to write about it. Okay, so these are our topics for tomorrow. So enjoy your afternoon, and perhaps I'll see you guys tomorrow. Okay, be well. Enjoy, enjoy, enjoy.